My name's Johanna. I'm from the UN Innovation Network, and we've recently hosted a couple of webinars on data visualization in which we explored the basics of data visualization. My personal key takeaway from that was that it's always better to use bar charts. Let's see if that realization will stand the test of this webinar today. And these previous sessions will run in collaboration with colleagues from OCHA. If you didn't join them or if you didn't watch the recording afterwards, really encourage you to do so. Very, very useful sessions, very entertaining as well. There was a lot of interest in the topic of data visualization, and because of this, we decided to continue the learning journey and dive a little bit deeper into how we use annotations and animations and interactions to highlight takeaways in data visualizations. And this is, of course, really important to make sure that people who are using visualizations can easily understand key messages and base their decisions on them. So before I introduce you to our presenter, I just want to ask you a quick question to understand how much you're using data in your job. You should have a poll pop up, so take a moment and let us know how much do you work with data in your day-to-day job. And then there'll be a second question come up, and it's how often do you need to visualize data for work, ranging from all the time to never. Take a moment to let us know. It will help set the scene. And as usual, we are not moving on until we have at least 75% of responses. So if you haven't voted yet, take a moment. Oh, okay. With more people joining, it's becoming difficult to hit the 75. I'll make an exception. Here's the results. So almost half of you are saying we're working with data all the time. That's great. And the other half sometimes. Fantastic. And then most of you need to visualize data at least once a week. That's also great. Here's actually, there we go. There's the results. Thanks for taking the time. So lots of interest, lots of need. That is music to our ears, of course. So in this webinar today, we're going to have 3 parts. We're going to start with a presentation, and then there will be an opportunity for Q&A throughout, as well as at the end of the presentation. And we'll happily take any clarifying questions that you may have. And then in 1 hour, at about 11 a.m. Eastern time, we're also going to have a demo of some commonly used and freely available data visualization tools. That was one of the biggest questions from our previous webinars, so a good opportunity to learn and at least see how some of these tools work and get a feeling for them. And as usual, we're going to take your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So please don't put them in the chat. Please put them in the Q&A box. It makes it so much easier for us to manage them. And please feel free to vote on people's questions as well. Right, and with that, enough from me for sure. And I'm super excited to introduce you to our presenter for the day. We are joined by Hong Koo for this webinar. He's an adjunct lecturer in public policy at the Harvard Kennedy School, where he teaches data visualization. He's also done a lot of work on AI and particularly on spotting unconscious biases and structural inequalities in AI system. Also super interesting topic, I think. And before that, Hong was actually one of the first engineers at YouTube and built some of the features that we all know and use today when browsing YouTube. So I'm really glad that he could join us. And at this point, I also want to say thank you to colleagues from DESA for making that connection. Hong, thank you for finding the time. It's really great to have you. And I'm going to hand over to you to take us through the presentation.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much, Johanna. And first, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to share my skills and my knowledge of data visualization with you all. I grew up in New York, and I'm very much a big fan of the United Nations, which is on the Midtown East Side. And New York City is a very international city, so it's a great community. So for my presentation today, I'll give you a sense of how to use data visualization to get your message across, not just to create a picture or some data, but to really communicate what you want the audience to notice, what you want them to focus on. And you can use that by highlighting important aspects of the data visualization. So the agenda for today will look like this. We'll learn how to create charts and maps using Excel, Flourish, Datawrapper, and Tableau. We'll be very mindful of intentionally focusing the viewer's attention through the use of animations, annotations, and interactions. I like to use the term, there's an annotation layer of the visualization. So you have the chart layer, the information layer, but the annotation layer adds a narrative, adds more context. And we'll briefly go over color and contrast to highlight things. And I'll summarize by explaining to you and also demonstrating to you the workflow I use to take a real data set that sometimes is very messy and complex and confusing even, and restructure it and remodel the information to tell stories using data visualization. Okay, so let's begin. Think of data as pieces of Legos. Individual pieces are messy. I know this because I have 2 kids and they're always making a big mess. The whole living room is full of toys on the floor. And I clean it up and 2 days later, it's back to that big mess. So that's how the natural state of data is. There's just randomness and entropy, and it tends towards disorganization. When I worked at YouTube and Google, their model was to organize the world's information and to make it available. So to get to information, you have to start organizing and combining and structuring these individual pieces of data into something that's maybe insightful or meaningful or useful. But that's still not enough. I want to urge you to become storytellers with data. So you take the data, transform it to information, and after that, you have to put some kind of storytelling element to what is the key takeaway. What am I supposed to get out of this data visualization? So a story is, I think, the highest level of the data visualization work that we all do. And we have to add that next level into data visualization. So today, I'm only focusing on one data set. I actually went into the UN's website, went to the Department of Economics and Social Affairs, Population Dynamics. And back in 2018, they have a data set that shows us the 30 largest cities ranked by the population of those cities from the time frame 1950 to 2035. And notice 2035 is a projection. We're only in 2021. So about 14 years in the future, guess what are the top 30 cities in the world? So this is very interesting because you have this structured data. You can ask many questions of it. The most obvious question is, can you give me the listed rank list? City number 1, the biggest city, which city, guess which city that might be. I'll give you a hint. I think it's in India. And then you show all the rest of the 29, the other cities. So that's a very simple bar graph, if you will, listing these cities ranked from top to bottom. Maybe another question you might ask of this data set is, I grew up in New York City, so I'm very curious about New York City. I think it's the greatest city ever in history. And I love it. I grew up here and I took advantage of all the resources and the great people and the immigrant spirit here. In particular, I'm actually right now in Flushing, New York, and it's one of the birthplaces of religious tolerance, religious freedoms from the legacy of the Dutch deliberations around liberties. And And I can walk around in Flushing and I see different religious organizations and buildings of all diverse kinds. And so it's a legacy of the city being so open and liberal. But cities can afford to do that. You have this mixing of ideas and new ways of building community and forming a polity. So going back to the data, how will the cities evolve? How will the mega cities change just in terms of population size? I want to see how New York changed from the year 1950 to eventually 2035. I'll give you another preview. The city basically doubled in size.
Just to come in here, just to confirm, we're looking at the slide still, right? The largest cities, not actually the data yet. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely. That makes sense. I'm intentionally kind of, just like in any exercise, trying to see the idea of what is the question, what is the story you're telling. So this is giving you inspiration to motivate some of the charts I'll be showing you. I always say the hard part is conceptualizing this storytelling, this message. The easy part is the technical work of building the charts. So I'll be teaching you how to build the charts, but I assure you, it's your topic expertise and your creativity and your inspiration for coming up with the questions in the first place that people want answers for, people want to learn more about. That's the heart of good data visualizations. And I'll try to give you more examples of that. So another chart is not just a rank comparison of the top cities, but another chart is a change over time. How is New York City changing over time? So you can imagine like a line graph or a series of columns that go up every few years, or sometimes go down, as you'll see. So that's another chart. And the third chart that I'll focus on is a map. And a map will show you in a geographical view what are the top 30 cities of any of these years. And you can explore that data. And you can see for each city the change between those years. So that's a way to explore, to discover new ideas, and then take those new ideas and create. It's a separate chart. It's a separate view of those answers. And those answers could be, on its own, be turned into a graph or a chart or a map just for social media or just for a specific presentation. So this is the kind of setup. But to begin, this is how, if you will, how ugly the data will look. This is the actual, Excel file. I took a screenshot of this data. It contains the cities, right? The names of the cities and the countries they're in. It also contains, very conveniently, the longitude and latitude, which will enable us to put this on a map without any extra work. You'll find the points on the map. The software is intelligent. And it also shows you, notice the year. So it's going to repeat every 5 years, 1950, 1955, all the way to 2035. Each year will have its own row. And the population is just this number right here. Okay, so we have this very organized data. This is actually one of the more easier to work with data sets. You have a time series, you have change over time. And you have a comparison. You have different kind of values in terms of population size at that point in time. Okay, so there's maybe 2 dimensions with a value in between. One dimension is the city. The other dimension is the year. As the city dimension also has a country which has multiple cities. So there's a hierarchy in the structure. And you can visualize the hierarchy as well. And then there's these values, which in data visualization, you're showing or you're encoding different sizes or different positions or different colors to show the values. So looks pretty straightforward. Let's see what we're able to produce out of this. Okay. And by the way, all these slides, all these data files, the Excel file and the cleaned up, organized data file, and these charts and dashboards, and they're all freely available. And I'll send you a link to all those resources. So don't worry about that. I will be able to give you that information. In fact, right now, and I'm going to put it in the chat. I put it all in a Google Drive so you can access it. You can download the slide deck. You can download pretty much everything, even the Tableau data file. Okay, I hope that you find that useful. Okay. And I'll take a pause if there's any questions so far in the setup of why we're making these charts and telling these stories. So does anyone have any input or comments, please?
I haven't seen any come in yet. And again, let's leave a moment in case colleagues have questions. If you have them throughout what Hong is explaining, again, just put them in the Q&A box and we'll take strategic breaks like this one throughout and try and get to them. But I think for now, we might be okay, Hong.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So in this dashboard, we have two different charts. One chart is a map of the 30 largest cities in 2035. And the second chart below it is the top 10 cities. So in terms of the visual encoding, the size of the circle is the size of the population. And then the length of the bar is, again, the size of the population. And notice in the second bar chart, I consciously use a title that has the takeaway in the words. And sometimes you might want to do this. Sometimes you're not allowed to do this, or it's better just to have a descriptive informational title. But this title has the takeaway. It gets the message right away in the words of the title. And I also use color to reinforce this. I grayed out all the other countries and then highlighted cities in colors according to the countries. And so the 4 cities, they kind of jump out at you. That's a use of contrast, color, highlighting to really, if this is the story that you want to tell, this, I think, tells it very clearly without you having to be next to that audience person and kind of talking about it and explaining this. And again, the color is reinforced here in the map. Okay, so let's go to the next. From a theoretical, if I was teaching this in class, I'll really try to get this notion that going from back here, this Excel sheet, trying to find any message, any information is hopeless. Our brains are not tuned to do that, to read every single cell of values. But here, it takes half a second or 0.1 seconds if you do a good job of visualizing this. So our visual system is highly tuned to see patterns, spot trends, and identify outliers. So that's what your visualization and your highlighting should do. And then your message will naturally follow. I'll give you a quick example. This is a survey results of some e-commerce website. And these are some of the kind of scores of how satisfied customers are with each of the characteristics of this e-commerce site. Instead of this, we can improve by sorting it, by using color to highlight what's going well and what's not going well, so that it could be much more actionable for the team. So this is a much better rearrangement of this. And you have to take the extra steps of highlighting and calling out what's working well and what needs improvement. Because our brains, it takes less than 0.2 seconds to see it. It's called pre-attentive processing. Our brains will see this message and will understand immediately. So take advantage of pre-attentive processing. There's another example. When Vox talked about the number of hurricanes in the Atlantic from 2000 to 2020. They highlighted that 2020 was an outlier and very high, and they put the data label and made it visible where they didn't here. And obviously, because it's a darker blue, it catches your eye. So in terms of color, you have data that might be continuous, that increases or decreases. You might have data that diverges from maybe a negative value to a positive values in a midpoint value, like surveys sometimes. And you have categorical, which are just discrete, like each country is a discrete data point. So you want to use different colors altogether. But when it comes to highlighting, notice just using contrast, like there's a solid background, in contrast to the white background, a solid black and the white text really stands out. But even more stronger or more loud is this alert using very culturally, colors that indicate warning or danger really also. So be cautious of this. Don't use too many colors and don't overuse these alerts. Use slight contrast and keep everything as much as possible to like a gray tone. And so at the Financial Times, this data visual journalist, he talks about the analogy of if you're making, let's say, a family home video, you will still need to edit it. If you're doing an interview, you still need to edit it and pick out the bits that the readers should care about. That's the spirit behind this whole workshop. You have to pick out and edit the layers of information and use text and use color and use animation and annotations and interactions to focus the viewer's attention and interpretation of the data visualization to what you are trying to convey, and try to put everything else in the background and put the annotation layer in the foreground. So these are books I highly recommend, and there's lots of practice exercises, and they even also open source many of the files, so feel free to make use of this. But their general guidance is understand the context of the story, choose different types of charts, like I explained, maybe a bar chart or a map or some kind of a time series line chart. Eliminate the clutter. Half of the battle is just to remove all the automatically generated clutter the software gives you, and then focus the attention, just like I was explaining, and then tell the story. The story kind of tells itself if you do all the steps before this. Again, simplicity takes a lot of discipline, takes extra effort. Just like the, I think scientist, philosopher Pascal said, I only made this letter longer because I did not have time to make it shorter. So we all, when we do data visualizations, get exhausted. By the time we produce this graph, we're like, I have no more time left. I have no more mental energy left. But you should reserve at least 20, maybe even 50% of your time, taking the extra step of cleaning up the chart to focus on what's the message. So what people actually see when you show them a dashboard is, unlike a single chart, a dashboard has multiple charts. It's something like this. Your eyes actually just meander and sometimes go in all directions, but they get pulled into visually strong elements. So try this. If you're looking closely, you can see this might be how you see this dashboard. And again, you can put all this work in as the team building this visualization, but the audience will be drawn to whatever is the loudest and the most attention, attracts the most attention. Okay. So this is what most people see. And just to summarize, when it comes to designing visualizations, you have the story, you have the data, and then you have your message. You want to have some kind of impact. And finally, you have the kind of aesthetic design, the visual, the color choices, and so on. And a successful visualization incorporates all these 4 criteria. So just to recap, your mission is to transform the data into information. But beyond that, you need to tell a story with that information so it will resonate and be compelling. First, you declutter, and then you highlight to focus and draw the viewer's attention. Make use of the annotation layer. And the 4 elements that make a good visualization is the data itself, structuring it and modeling it, coming up with a story, and then trying to assess or evaluate the impact and whether the data visualization has that impact. And then the design of the visual hierarchy, which in the previous 2 sessions, the presenters were so good at explaining how do you do the design and choose the right type of charts. So I refer you back to those 2 videos. Okay, and I have some resources, I won't go over them, but generally the process is I use different tools for different parts of the process. Tableau is really good for creating interactive dashboards. It's good for exploratory data analysis that your team and yourself can use to analyze visually the data. But when it comes to the final chart or the final kind of graph that you want to publish in the PowerPoint or the report or in social media, I prefer Datawrapper. I like Flourish Studio, and I'll give you examples of this from right now. Okay, so the process is, as I've shown you, you choose the topic, you come up with some general questions or stories you're trying to tell. Then you get the Excel sheet and you spend many hours, maybe days and weeks, cleaning up the data, structuring it, and then exploring that data to discover and interact with that data. Some insights that you might want to publish. And then you choose the type of charts you want, you design the interactions, and you add in this annotation layer with storytelling. And implementation is just using the software like Tableau or Datawrapper or any of these data visualization, BI, and building it, the actual steps of building and creating it. And it's getting easier every year because the software is becoming more user-friendly and intuitive and more powerful and flexible. And most importantly, you have to get feedback. You have to show your prototypes or show early drafts of the designs of the visualizations and get feedback from your target audience, from your colleagues, from your managers, and then go back again to go redo some of these steps. So it's an iterative process. It's not a linear process. So you keep going back in loops. Okay, so focusing on our data set and our storytelling, I will give you a preview of some of the charts, and then we'll go to question and answer. After the question and answer, you're welcome to watch me demonstrate the software and the actual work. So I'll come back to Q&A, get your questions ready in about five minutes, and we'll start that. But think of questions, please type them into the chat. But first, I'll give you some of the charts that were built so you can have a sense of how they look like. Okay, the tools I use was Datawrapper, Flourish, and Tableau. This is what gets created automatically by Excel. And I'm not happy with Excel because it's not very, it's cluttered. It's not very kind of pleasing to the eye, let's say. It has the same information, but it doesn't have the highlighting. And the title, Excel automatically puts a title. And so the title is very, auto-generated and not very clean. And notice I remove all the grid lines because I have the values here, as the previous workshop teacher talked about. I think Akiku said, if you have the numbers, you don't need the grid lines or even the axes. So Datawrapper automatically generates this with some styling additions. So same chart, but built using Datawrapper as opposed to Excel. This is also using Datawrapper, and this is the time series or the changeover time chart I spoke about. In New York City, I want to draw attention to the fact that the population decreased. Now there's a whole history behind it, and just entire books and PhDs on this. But New York City was in a tough fiscal crisis, and it was unsafe and shrinking in the 1970s. So I use a highlighted region, I use an annotation, and I really try to draw attention to this story, if that's what your project is all about. And so Tableau, Datawrapper has these features built in. You can add these annotation layers. And the reason I change this, there's many different ways to treat the predictions, but you want to distinguish an actual historical true data versus projected forecasted data. So for now, I just made it a different color. Sometimes people use dotted lines or even shaded highlight areas. And sometimes they have sensitivity analysis, but be very cautious not to try to convey or mislead the viewer into thinking this is certainty. There's no certainty here. This is the future. Now, this is an animated chart. And I think I have to show you this in action in order to make sense of it. And you might all have seen some of this in like YouTube or other places where in social media, where the charts are animated. So the chart I want to show you in action is this. I hope you can see this clearly.
Yes, it works well.
Great. So this is revealing a ton of insight, even though it's maybe visual eye candy, but it is telling you something of change over time. And the reason I use colors again is to focus your attention on those two countries, China and India. From the 1990s onwards, really have mega cities. That's going to go up into the top 10. If that's the story you're telling. Okay. So into the future, 2025, 2030, 2035. So this is the top 10 cities. As I gave you a clue, Delhi is the biggest city at 43 million people. And so that's the feel or I think, this is not only entertaining, but it's also informative. So I like this. And just let me finish showing the charts and I'll go to Q&A in just a couple more minutes. Okay, so that's, I'll in the next section, I'll show you how to build one of these in Flourish. So I'll do the actual step-by-step guide. Also using Flourish, I created this. No one likes pie charts, and pie charts only represent, part of a whole of different in a pie. I use rectangles, and the benefit of this rectangle tree map chart type is that it has two levels of hierarchy. It has country, and it has the city in the country. So this is a tree map type. It's pretty easy to build as well, as long as you structure the data in this hierarchical way. In Tableau, this is the same as the Excel bar chart. So nothing new here, but using a different piece of software. This is the map in Tableau, and it's an interactive map. And this is the dashboard, but I do want to show you before we go to Q&A, this last interaction of how this works. So let me show you this one and share the screen with that truly interactive view and explain how I thought about it. So Tableau, this is the bar chart, straightforward. I added a mouse over effect or a tooltip so that you can see what part of the world on the map the city is, if that's something useful to the audience. And that's basically building a map chart and embedding it into the tooltip. You can do that in Tableau. It's a really nice feature, I believe, too. learn more and drill down to get details on demand. And you can organize any combination of charts and tooltips as well. And this is a simpler version, just the top 10 cities. Another chart I created was this line chart, and this is for the purpose of embedding these graphs in the map. So this is not the final presentation. This is just for the future. And then here is more of a heat map or a highlight table. And I put an annotation here. So Tableau allows you to annotate. So this for the country of Spain, just in the year 1970s, there were 2 cities in the top 30, Madrid and Barcelona. This is the map. The map is also interactive, as you can see. My mouse over shows you some statistics, but even better would be, let's say this one. This is the line graph of New York City that I recreated. Even better would be this map. Imagine this, the user can explore the data and look at all the cities that ever was in the top 30 list from any of these years and see the trend. You see that? Even if they were there only for 1 year. Right. What surprised me was London actually is not growing. Do you guys know that? London is kind of flat, around a little less than 10 million. So I discovered that it actually didn't even make it to the top 30 list. So this type of data exploration is interesting for a dashboard for people who to explore and get information that they care about on their own terms. And I combine these two into a dashboard. So basically I drag 2 of these charts into this screen, and now there's one. And they interact with each other. If I click, let's say on Delhi, it only shows Delhi. So Tableau allows you to make it interactive in this way. And if I care about countries in China, I click on China and you'll see only. So they're interactive. That's what makes dashboards powerful, because you can interact in this way for the user to intuitively interrogate the information and discover their own insights. And not only is it useful for a final product dashboard, but it's super useful for your own internal team to build these kind of exploratory data visualization charts and dashboards, so that you can actually uncover and then publish from there using Datawrapper and Flourish some of the findings that you get by interacting with charts in this way. Okay, I'm going to stop presenting so that we can actually see each other. Actually, I can't see you, but we can go into Q&A at least and address some of the questions that we have.
Thanks for that, Hong. A really nice data set. I was sitting here like going with my nose to the screen to zoom in and like, well, I wish I could have zoomed in and play with it. So super nice. I have to say that I was surprised that you included New York and Newark in the same box. It's like that feels like very different.
That's actually a function of the original data. I think the categorization.
Did it hurt you as a New Yorker?
No, I'm fine with no bad comments about Jersey.
No bad
I love Jersey.
All right, we all love Jersey.
It takes me to Philadelphia.
Fair enough. So I have a bunch of questions coming in. I have 2 philosophical ones, and the first one may almost be more of a statement. And there's all colleagues, by the way, today anonymous, so I don't know what's going on. Usually colleagues put their name. So the first colleague is really more saying that they find themselves unable to engage with a visualization that may have a good message but is done poorly. That resonates with me. It also resonates for document. Does it resonate with you as well? Is that a common problem?
Yes, I think that's kind of my, why I want to give this workshop. If the message is, interesting and the story is good, you have to fulfill that, make the most of that story and, use the software tools to add in this additional highlighting, this annotation layer. And then the story kind of comes alive by itself. So totally common problem. And I guess a good reminder that we really have to invest in not just understanding our data, but going the extra mile to make it accessible. Before we get a little bit more technical on the platforms, because I see lots of questions coming in about that, I have someone here and saying,
it's a question around key messages and saying, I might not know what they are before I've played around with the data and understood what they include and what they show. And you said at the beginning, it's important to kind of think about key messages first before you go into data visualization. So how do you recommend it if we actually don't know what the key messages is? Is it just start playing with the data and then take a deliberate step back? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that's exactly my process. I familiarize myself with the data, but I also have to familiarize myself with the context and the domain knowledge and talk to some of the domain experts. And after that, I work together closely with them to put the data in Tableau and do that kind of exploratory data analysis visually, not just in Excel. You could do it in Excel too, but I prefer to do it in Tableau. And those charts and dashboards are not meant to be public, not meant for public consumption, but it helps us as a team to arrive at some kind of a meaningful story or message. And I encourage you to learn Tableau and Power BI to do those functions. And after you have distilled it, you actually want to rebuild the chart altogether and recreate a smaller data set, as I will demonstrate in the second half of this presentation workshop, how to actually filter out only the data you need to create those visualizations. So don't go straight, in the first half an hour of your project to create a chart. That's the biggest mistake. You have to have some type of, message. You have to have some type of, what is the impact I'm having? And there is a resource that I will point out to you that I put in the Google Drive from the book, Telling Stories with Data. And these resources are amazing. So I put it in a folder here. So if I may, I'll screen share and show you where the resources are so that you can refer to it. Okay, so yeah. So almost there. There's a guidelines folder, and inside the guidelines folder, the resources are this question, the worksheet. You have to answer these questions. Who is your audience? What's at stake? What are the risks if they do not understand your visual or misinterpret your visualization? And then forming your big idea. So these are important worksheets to go to, and it's from that book. And then there's even a rubric or checklist whether you have done all the steps. I find these checklists also super helpful for your team to go to. And I think that was the most, one of the best questions I had, and I hope you follow those guidelines.
Great, thank you for including them. That looks super useful. And thank you for emphasizing again that this is really the first critical step, because it's so easy to get carried away and saying, oh, we have this data, let's just jump straight into visualizing it. So really, really appreciate the reminder here. Okay, now I think we're getting technical. And that is technical on the platform side. So a very common question in the UN is, are visualization platforms free and are they open source? And here a colleague is wondering specifically about Flourish and Datawrapper. Are they open source? And the colleague is saying Tableau is not.
Yes, so Tableau is definitely a proprietary. You have to pay actually a high price. There's a version of Tableau that's called Tableau Public, and the Public is a web-based tool. So I'll show you again a very quick demo of Tableau Public, the free version, so that you can get a sense of how to use it, how to access it. Okay, so let me go into that. So it's quite proprietary, quite expensive, but it's like a kind of a free version that's kind of usable. So I created a Tableau profile and I upload all my visualizations here in this called Tableau Public, kind of like a hosting platform that Tableau provides. And then you can embed these into other websites as well. So you can take this chart and put it into another website in the middle of something. And you see dashboards in many organizations' websites containing Tableau embeds. One thing you can do is edit. Once you have your account and you uploaded it. And when you edit, you go into public.tableau.com and you can use this for free, this version of it. And there's a lot of functionality and so on. So that's one thing. I'm going to stop screen sharing. Datawrapper is free, but if you want some of the advanced features, advanced branding, you have to pay a monthly fee. So is Flourish. So they are free versions of those two software, and that's one of the reasons I chose them, because they are available. Most of the functionality is available. So.
That's great. Just a quick follow-up question on Tableau Public. So when using that, that would mean that my dashboard is public to anyone who wants to, well, no, it's not.
There's a few different ways you can publish your Tableau. The public one is definitely public to everyone. There's something called Tableau server, which internally only maybe your team or your company will have access to that Tableau server. And there's also the desktop version, kind of like Excel files. You can just give that Excel file to someone and only they have that Excel file. So there's local kind of computer-based local version of Tableau as well.
Great. So even in the free version, there's ways to work with data that we might not want everyone to see. So that's
the public one. I'm not so sure. I haven't tried to like do a private version of Tableau public. But if you're fortunate enough, if your team at the UN is fortunate enough to have the license to Tableau, I highly recommend it. And I teach most of my classes using Tableau.
It is a very nice software. I know some UN entities have it, others not. So it's a hit or miss here. I don't know. Staying with Tableau, first of all, do you know if the app is applicable for Mac? Quick and easy question.
Yeah, totally. 100% both PC and Mac.
Love it. Quick. And then, so once you have the final version in Tableau, do you, do we require to show the data via Tableau system only, or can we link the data to other systems, for example, PowerPoint or Teams? What's the process there?
Yeah, there's a few things. The thing I showed you was just sharing it and hosting it on Tableau Public, and then maybe taking an embedded version and post it in the middle of your blog or your website as a dashboard, as a chart. That's one way. Another way is you can export the image file. All these softwares let you export a static image file, which you can put anywhere because it's an image file. And you can also export in Tableau the data, different views of the data back into Excel. So sometimes I use Tableau to just structure the data in different ways and put it back into Excel or any other charting software, and now create a simpler chart. It's quite flexible. So yeah, I think, you can export in almost any way you need it to go. There's also a Tableau reader software. I think you can just view Tableau apps. But the easiest way is just to publish it in Tableau Public if you don't mind. Everyone else can see it. Great.
And if you do mind, actually check, I think Tableau has an agreement with the UN where they offer an NGO rate to UN colleagues. So if you are interested in using that, make sure to check that out as well. Okay, I actually have some colleagues going forward and putting their name in, which is great. So I'm going to try and give the floor to colleagues called Ngoto. I really like your question. I'm going to give you the floor. If you want to unmute and ask the question yourself, please feel free.
Hi, this is Naoki from UNESCO. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much for your presentation, and it's very intriguing. I always wondering about color schemes in data visualization, because some of my friends who are slightly colorblinded, and they also always have problems choosing between, for example, green and red. So do you have any advice on this? Are there any colorblind friendly palettes, or any advice on the color combinations that we should avoid? Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to admit, my biggest weakness as a designer is that I'm myself colorblind. I struggle with finding shades. I have to find the exact color code or key and then cut and paste into different apps. So that's actually not easy for me too. And I appreciate it when any data visualization goes through the extra step of making sure it's colorblind safe. One thing I can point you to is in Datawrapper, they have a very convenient feature down here. As I'm creating this, it says check for color blindness, and it'll show you how it looks for different people, different color blindness. So more and more there's software that's available and tools like this that's available to kind of test or quality assurance that it's going to work for every audience member. But in general, I think color is a very complicated subject, and I'm definitely not the expert in it. But my approach is to use less color. When I do have to use color, sometimes I use the organization's brand color or some culturally or topics related color, but sometimes I can't. So for example, if I use too much red, it'll be very loud and draw attention from other things, even though that's the brand color of the organization. So try to be tone down the use of color as much as possible, unless you have a really great reason. And different cultures interpret different colors differently, so all the more reason to be cautious.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naki. Great question indeed. Love it. I have another one from an anonymous attendee, and then I'm going to go to Antra. And the anonymous colleague is wondering, what do you do if you have pre-existing conventions that are not conducive to data visualization? And the colleague is giving an example. Energy statistics, there's a convention of using the same range of 10 rainbow colors. And the colleague is recognizing himself that might not be ideal for energy sources and fuels. How do you balance between challenging old-fashioned conventions and making data accessible to specific domain audiences?
I think those constraints are real, and sometimes conventions work for you in terms of those audiences who have worked as specialists will understand it right away and will not, feel any negativity towards your color choices or other conventional decisions. But if your audience is beyond that inner circle and it goes out to a more public communications function, I think you should have some freedom to break out of these conventions to go by some of the guidelines I listed here, and try your best to make the visualizations clean and clear. So clarity is the key, I think. If it's not clear and those conventions are getting in the way of comprehension and interpretation, then I think it's worthwhile to experiment, at least, to see what might work better.
Absolutely. And sometimes it could also be a case of just showing a better version, right? So giving the inspiration there.
Lots of iterations. So iteration is the key here.
Exactly. And I'm going to try now give, as a nice segue to our next section, I'm going to give the floor to our colleague Antra. Antra, if you're there and if you'd like to unmute, please go ahead and ask the question yourself.
Sure, thank you. So my question was kind of a follow-up on this big issue of how to maintain the anonymity of the data. So I work at UN Women, and we work with a lot of data which we do not want to make public until the report or the accompanying data are out. But I'm not sure how it works particularly with Datawrapper and Flourish, that if you upload any data set, I'm scared to do that because I don't want to, make it public. So if we could have a confirmation from a professional like yourself on which of these softwares kind of allow you or don't, or sort of respect the privacy of the data, then it would allow me to sort of understand better, because sometimes it doesn't even show, but I'm not sure if that data is being made publicly available to other people that I'm not aware of. So it would be good to get that confirmation. And I'm going to piggyback on the color palette question as well to ask another thing, because we sometimes have color palettes that we have to use for particular reports, like the generation equality was the famous one for UN Women. So are any of these software supportive of uploading your own color palettes to do the visualizations? Thank you very much for the floor. Very interesting workshop.
Thank you, Antra. Those are two really important questions. When it comes to data kind of security, because you don't want any piece of those data going out on the web. And when you upload it to Datawrapper Flourish, it has to go into the web because these are web-based data visualization software. You can't do anything unless you upload it. So I haven't looked at it very closely. I'm pretty sure if the pay version, if you pay for the license, and it could get very expensive because they charge per user, then those data probably could be private only. And for the public one, I think the softwares offer one feature that I sometimes take advantage of is you can add a password to it. So only people who know that password can see the visualization or access any of the data. I'm not sure how foolproof and 100% secure that is, but that's one other kind of safeguard to put a password to any versions, earlier versions that's not ready for the public. Tableau could be 100% private because Tableau is a desktop software, just like Excel. So you can just move the Tableau files back and forth between each other. And you don't have to ever use Tableau public. You can just export the image files and take that image into, let's say, PowerPoint or a blog or social media upload. So that's the security question. I think regarding the color palette, it's all very flexible, just like any design software. As long as you know the color codes, you can just manually type in like custom color code, and you can arrange them as you like and organize that palette and assign different colors to it. So it's pretty straightforward and 100% flexible for you to choose any color you like and use that in any palette you like.
Great, thanks for that, Hong, and thank you, Antra, for the question. So shall we go into the demo?
Yes, of course. This is probably the most exciting, but for me, the highest risk part, because there's always something that goes on with the live demo. So please bear with me. But I'm going to try to walk you step by step from the very moment I downloaded that data set from the UN website and show you how the files work. Okay, so great. If there's nothing else, I'll go back to screen sharing and show you the actual work. Okay, so I'm going to begin just as if you would, I would go into the website, the Google Drive website that has the files. So let me go there first and then go do the steps. And I'll focus on Flourish and Tableau. Datawrapper, I feel like it's pretty intuitive, so you might have to figure that out yourself, but it's actually probably one of the more user-friendly softwares in the market. Okay, so I go into Excel file, and there's 3 Excel files. One of them is the original UN data set. So this is the file I downloaded. So you guys see this. I haven't done anything to the data yet. I haven't. This is just an Excel document, right? And how many rows are there? It's not big data set. It's about 557 data entries broken down by year and by city, right? The first thing I did with this was I'm going to show you the actual Excel file in a web-based Excel. So this is Microsoft Office 365, which is just like the desktop Excel, but it's on the web, so it's on this side. And you can create a copy and everything, so you can play with this yourself. So I have the original data. What I did was I took all these columns and I deleted it. Delete rows, basically the data visualization software doesn't like these header columns. You don't need it. I deleted some of these other columns like notes and so on. And sadly, we have to delete the logo. I'm very sorry, but it has to go. So the clean version of the data looks something like this. These are the columns of data variables that really we care about to use. Now in Excel, you can do a filter. So let's say in 2023, we even haven't gotten to any data visualization yet. This is just, cleaning the data. You can right click. So you can filter and only filter for this year. Or you can just, delete everything and save this year, or you can filter. So what I did was, this is the filter view. There's a filter here. And when you click on the filter, you check the box you care about, right? So since I only check this box, it only shows me this. What I do from here is I copy and paste. Copy and then paste into this next. So I'm creating a lot of tabs just to keep like each step very organized and can go back to each previous step. I copy and paste the values. This is very important. Paste values, not paste all the formatting and functionality. Once you paste values, this is a clean, just the raw data. And I graph it. So next in Excel, to graph something, you take the columns you want. You take this column and you take this column. We don't graph the country. We don't graph the year because it's the same year. And you insert a graph. And this is a bar chart. And create something like this. And you can organize it and re-edit it. But notice Excel doesn't really format anything. It looks not so clean. So I'll stop here with the Excel instruction. And here I filtered for I do want all the years, but I filter for New York City. This is the New York City line graph that I spoke about. Okay, so this is the New York City. One last thing about Excel, this is a very advanced feature. Don't worry if you don't follow this, you can read up or watch a tutorial on this. You can transform this data that lists each year one by one and each country in this kind of long format, this long database, into a more flat database. A flat database lists all the years across. So I'm using an Excel function called pivot table to transform this data into a flat database. And the reason it's flat, I know it's very hard to see, but the reason it's flat is because the years are listed across for each column as a year, as opposed to being repeated. So this is all the boring kind of Excel data cleaning, and there's a whole industry around data analysts and data engineers around this. But just a preview of what it takes to create something like this. Now I'm going to create this chart for you. I'm going to create this animated chart and show you how it's done. Okay, so what I have now is the final tab. This is ready to export into Flourish to create an animated race chart for the bigger cities over time. So I copy this flat data table that has the countries in the first column, the cities in the second column, and then all the years across. I copy this, and this is already built, right? I go to the data tab in Flourish. There's a preview tab and data tab. I go to the data tab, and basically I just paste it over all these data. So just to give you even fresher start, I'm going to open a new one, go to create new visualization, select from one of these chart types. In this case, it's down here. It's the bar race chart. And I click here. It has a template or some placeholder data. I want to remove this, so I go to data and I highlight everything and I delete whatever's in here. I put in my own data, which has been, formatted in this flat view in Excel. And pretty much I'm done. This is the race chart. But I also need to make sure each of the columns, map to what the values should be. So the label should be the city, which is column B, right? Column B is the city. I don't want country, column B. The values are from the years, from column C, I think, to column T. So you just write down column C to column T. And then the category are actually the countries. So country A. And in this case, I don't have an image, so I can keep it blank. Okay, so when I created these data, I had to make sure I map the values to the right columns. Now it's changing, as you see, right? I'm not going to format it any further, but this is what it takes for Flourish to create one of these charts that has animation. But there's a lot of formatting things you could do. Like, for example, the legend. I do not want to show the legend, so I disable it. And now it's a little cleaner. Okay, so I'll stop here in the interest of time to show you this is how I created the race chart. The other chart in Flourish I created was this kind of tree map hierarchical view. So that chart is this chart. And the data is actually pretty straightforward. In Excel, you need to have all the have the year 2035. You pick a specific point in time, and you show the part of a whole, or the composition of each city and their population in terms of relative size to the whole. So let's say I have this data in Excel, right? And I copied it. I go to Flourish. I go to create new visualization. And I have to look for the one that I care to use, which is the tree map. And notice this hierarchical chart types, they're very easy to switch between these 4 types. So I'll show you later on how to do it. Again, Flourish has some pre-built data. I don't care about the pre-built data. I delete all this and I paste it. And then I map the nesting. I believe it's B and then C, country. The hierarchy is country, city. So B, C, and size by D. So let's see what happens. Does it look okay? Countries, right? And cities. Wonderful. Now, again, that was pretty easy. It has 4 columns. I don't actually use a column, so literally it only has 3 columns. The value of population, the 2 hierarchies, as designated here. And to switch between chart types, I can just click around here to different chart types. You see what's going on? It's actually encoding it in different visual formats, different chart types. And this is the stack bar chart, which is maybe, again, going to the previous presentations and workshops, the most intuitive. So you could choose any of these. And now when you're ready, you can export it and publish and embed, as you see. You can download the image as well. If you want to require a password, that's also, you have to pay for the required password feature. So that's a premium feature you have to pay for. But once I publish it, it's public on the web to the whole world. And this is the chart. And if I want to embed it, I can take an embed code and copy this code. Copy it. Okay, so that's how Flourish works. Datawrapper is virtually the same, but slightly different types of charts, a different aesthetic. And I actually think Datawrapper is more professional looking. So that's kind of my go-to software, whereas Flourish has these animations that's very easy to generate that you can't create anywhere else. But just a very quick one through Datawrapper. The first step is, again, you get the data and you just copy and paste into this blank box. Right. Once you pasted it, you go to the next step. It's kind of like the checkout process. It's a step-by-step process. It looks okay, like a preview. This is a preview, and you go next. And then from there on, you actually do the actual assignment of values and colors and so on in Datawrapper. You can customize the colors and choose the one you want. So you can actually put the code right here. This is where you would put the color code, as Antra asked about. And you can assign different colors to each of the elements. And then from here, you go to next step. You can highlight different elements by typing those in. And of course, you should always fill in the title, descriptions, and so on, and go to the next step. And when you're ready to publish, you you publish it, and you can embed the code. You can click on this URL, which shows you just the chart itself. Okay, so that's Datawrapper. I'm not going to spend any additional time showing this because Tableau is probably the most ambitious, complicated software. So maybe if you have questions, please feel free to add it into chat and the Q&A, and I can take a pause to answer questions about Flourish and Datawrapper. If not, I'll transition to Tableau. And the goal is not to teach you Tableau, but to give you a kind of like like just a map of the land of how Tableau works, what's possible in Tableau, and how, how to get data in there, how to create these charts in Tableau. Okay. So far, any questions?
No, I think Hong, if the colleagues are like me, I am just been watching you do this and quite amazed by the functionality of these two platforms or two websites. So super nice. I'm really liking it. I imagine colleagues were, basically doing the same as I, just sitting and observing what you were doing and impressed by the different visualizations that are so easily produced. So very nice.
Yeah, wonderful. Very nice. Well, I always say the technical part is probably the easiest. The Excel part, cleaning data, is the second hardest, but the most hardest is the, and the least creative, the cleaning of the Excel data. But the most important part is that kind of, what's the question you're asking? How do I answer that question using data visualization part? Okay, I'm gonna transition to Tableau, so I'll share that screen now. This is how Tableau looks like. One thing to know is there is a file in the Excel directory called Tableau, Excel file for Tableau. So what you're doing here is, this is the data. I add the data, I go to Excel, and then I take that, for Excel file, take this file, the top 30 cities for Tableau. Okay, and once it's loaded, it gives you a preview. So it's a very clean kind of data table of all this information. And to create a new chart, a new one, you go to a new worksheet. So this is the metaphor from Excel. You have a new worksheet, and automatically it recognizes the column heading variable names. So I might just want to recreate this Excel spreadsheet. So the first thing I do is I take the country, because I want to list each column as country, cities, and the population, and perhaps the year between city and population. So you'll get a sense. It's all drag and drop. I think 1000% better than Excel. Country, yay, we have a list of countries. Cities. Wow, the auto recognizes that these cities are in this country because the data structure is each city has a country next to it, right? So it's already in the data. That's how the data is structured. Now, maybe the next thing I need is year. So I drag year into here. I had to transform it into, this is a very kind of technical thing. If you get more into Tableau, you'll learn to do this into discrete years. So each year is not a continuous progression of time, but each year is a discrete point in time. Okay, and don't visualize discrete points in this case, just show the numbers, right? Okay, so I hope you can see this okay, but you get the general sense. Okay, and from here, I want the values. So how do I get the population values? I find the population variable and I drag it into this thing called text, right? Voila. This is my data, right? This is all the data. If I want to only show 2035, I drag year into a filter, because Tableau has this wonderful feature called filter. And this functionality allows me to say, I only want to show different years, and I check the box and filter out everything else. Just like in Excel, we did a filter by checking the box. This is the Tableau equivalent of that. And it has now shown only all the 2035, right? From here, Tableau has this, this is the most powerful thing about Tableau. It has this show me thing, the show me widget. And the show me widget allows me to choose different chart types instantly. So if I click from a data table here to a highlight table, it changes slightly. But if I want to create a, let's say a tree map, just see what happens. It creates a tree map. If I want to create the canonical bar chart, our favorite thing, it creates the bar chart. If I don't want to show country, I can delete country, right? I don't want country. And it just shows you the cities. If I want to sort it, I click sort. And I can show the population. And I'm done. That's the chart that Excel would have created. So that, and you can also filter the countries as well. If you drag the cities, let's say, and you can show none of it except for, let's say, a couple countries. And the filter works too, right? But you can also make the filters available to the end users when you're creating dashboards. All you have to do is show filter, and it appears on the right. You can also show highlighter, which appears here. And I'm going to check all the, not all the years, but all the cities. So this is not to teach you how to use it, but just to give you a sense of the power and the functionality of these. So I can show all the countries. I can remove this filter. I can change to this city. Okay, and I have too many things turned off. That's why it's not showing it. Okay, I only have, now I turned on this year, and I want to show this filter too, show filter. And I want to show the countries. Now, if I only care about the India countries, I click on the filter India. And there you go. These are the 5 countries and the 5 cities in 2035 of the cities in India. So that's how I was able to create this bar chart. And let's say I want to create a line chart. So I'm going to create new, and I want to create a chart of just, let's say, London. So I choose the city. I filter only for London. Well, London might not even, London's here. Okay. And I need to put some values in here. So I will put city here. You can also drag it here. It's pretty intuitive. And then you drag year into here. Again, discrete. I'm going a little fast because of time, but you can see. And then I want to show the values, the population inside the values. So it's all drag and drop, very intuitive, very little coding, if any, you need to do. And to create a line chart, go to show me, give me a line chart. Again, London is, if not to use it negatively, it's the population size is stagnating for whatever reason. So that's if you want to show the label values, you go to population and drag it into label. Just put it on top of it and drop it into label, and it shows you the values. If you want to annotate or create anything, you right click and go to annotation and annotate this mark. And you can type in anything you want. Okay, you can move it around and so on. So you can, so that's some of the features in for annotating. And you can change it into a column chart like this, right? So Tableau is super flexible in terms of how you can experiment and explore the data in different chart types. Okay, so that's to create the line chart. If I want to create a dashboard in Tableau, a dashboard is a combination of different charts. I can go to here, which is creating a new dashboard, the plus dashboard, new dashboard icon. And now I have a couple of charts. I have a dashboard. The dashboard knows that I have these charts pre-made in my previous work. So I can drag this into the dashboard, right? And just drags whatever last setting I had. This is the India. Now, if I want to add China, I can click here and filter only those 2 countries. If I want to change the year, I can change to today, 2020. Right. And then I going back to dashboard, now it's updated and it has the filters. I can take the line graph of the city and put it here, right? Let's say if the user selects one of these cities, I want this line to update. You can actually turn that on by clicking the funnel, and then you have to go back to the line chart and unfilter, remove this filter. And you have to go back to this line chart. So as I anticipated, a little bit of technical glitch, but let me just recreate a new line chart. I want the cities. So the year goes here. The city goes here. Let's say I check all of them. And the year is discrete, right? And the cities, also the cities will go to the left side, and the values is the population. Okay, I want a line chart. And the cities actually should be different colors. So I move it here. So now I have all the cities with different colors. This is the worst thing, the worst data visualization ever, because you have too many cities here and never use a spaghetti chart like this. But the only reason I need this is I need to use this sheet back in the dashboard and have it dynamically update. So I'm removing this from here. I'm taking the latest sheet I created, dragging it down here. And I want it to use that data source. And so this is, I show all the years. Let's say 2000, let's say 20. And the reason it's not showing in line is because the filter is set, this year is set to 2020 and showing me only a dot. So that's a difficult challenge. To resolve it, or kind of a workaround, is to go back to the tooltip, so that instead of using dashboards like this, I could just mouse over it and you'll show me the line chart. So that is the workaround. And to do that, I have to go back to the bar chart. This one, I go to the tooltip section and I insert the line graph. So when I go to insert, I go to insert sheet 5 and then I preview it. Right. And I can show the line, the data point here. So as you know, with real-time demos, I'm unable to bring the line chart, but it is possible because I had it working in the previous Tableau version. So as you see, it's Tableau is quite challenging, but you know, this is how it should look. Oh, the map has, the bar chart has the map, whereas the city, the map should have the line chart. That's right. So it makes more sense for the map to have the line chart. Okay, so in the spirit of time, you have all the files, and I can stay around for a couple more minutes to answer any technical questions about the demo, but Tableau is quite powerful. As you can see, you scratch the surface at 1% of its use and how to use it. And even myself as an expert and teacher gets confused. So don't feel bad if you have trouble learning it. Okay, so let's pause here. And,
yeah, thanks, Hong. So again, I've just been like glued to the screen and watching you do the work, which is almost the most fun part, right? Watching someone else show you something. And while you say that it is a little bit more of a complicated tool, given the amazing functionality it has, I think it's probably still on the easy side to use, right? Because it's so, for what you can do with it, it's really not overly complicated. But you're right, you need to sit down a little bit and just play with a data set a little bit and figure it out. Yeah, great. I am actually out of questions for you. I have seen, oh, there's one. Oh, Oh, you said, do you have any Tableau online courses? I would love to attend your class. Well, do you have any, Hong, or do you know of any Tableau online courses that we could point colleagues to?
Yeah, I remember that you all have access to LinkedIn Learning, and that's the best place to learn, actually. Their Tableau Essentials class is, I find, the best one, and I use it in my curriculum. So I can send you a URL in the chat right now. But yeah, that's the best one.
Great. And we seem to have a fan here. So I think this really speaks to a great presentation. I think there's another comment coming in here about doing something similar for Power BI. Hong, do you work with Power BI?
I myself haven't done anything at all with Power BI, but I hear it's pretty much the same as Tableau and just as powerful. And so therefore, I think it's a good tool to further, continue using and learning. But yeah, it's right. And I see many dashboards on the web using embedding those dashboards.
I think it's the UN's corporate solution. So I think there was a question from Anta. Anta, let's look into it and see if we can do something similar to what Hong has done today on Power BI. It seems like, Hong, I'm getting a lot of very, very positive feedback here in the chat, saying it's super interesting, so useful to see how you're doing it and know and learn more about these different platforms. So really passing on big compliments to you. Yeah,
thank you.
Sorry, I'm getting distracted by a comment here, but I think let me leave it at that. It's really so helpful to see it. It takes a little bit of the fear of the new platform away, seeing you do it and seeing what cool outputs you can generate with it. So super inspiring. I really enjoyed it. And again, looking at comments, I think colleagues did too. So I want to say thank you so much for joining us and for putting this presentation and demo together. It's been so fascinating.
Well, it's my pleasure to work with you all, and I hope you can really take it to the next level in terms of data visualization and storytelling for your work. And there's so much to learn. As you can see, I still have much to learn, and we all can, I think, get over this kind of starting up stage once you see how easy it is with these web-based tools and with this drag and drop visualization tools. Now the hard part is coming up good ideas of stories to tell.
It's the hard part. We'll tackle that now and work based on what you've taught us. So really, really thank you so much for joining us. And thanks everyone on the call for being with us today. It was great to have you. We'll share a recording and the material that Hong has shared in a follow-up email. And then you can take the learning from there.
Thank you so much, Johanna. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Hong. Wishing you a good day. Thanks, everyone.
Good luck.
Bye-bye.